Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. It feels as if I've become a silent observer, lurking in the shadows of my own home, a role I never imagined myself in. It was a distressing realization that weighed heavily on my heart, but I knew I could no longer ignore the signs. For weeks, a gnawing intuition whispered that something was wrong in my marriage. I desperately wished it weren't true, hoping I could shake off this feeling, but the truth was inevitable. Laura, my wife of 38 years, the woman I believed I knew inside and out, was showing unmistakable signs of infidelity. It was an accumulation of small, seemingly insignificant details that began to erode my peace of mind. I combed through phone records and emails, hoping to find some clue, but found nothing incriminating. Though we had no children, Laura led the life of a stay-at-home wife, channeling her creativity into crafting exquisite stained glass decorations and breathtaking windows. Her creativity seemed blissful, and I cherished her happiness. Meanwhile, I found my own satisfaction in a modest law practice. I wasn't the kind of lawyer who dazzles in the courtroom. My work dealt with wills, property transfers, no-fault divorces, and occasionally the drama of mundane legal matters. The most exciting part of my job? I never dealt directly with bail bonds, but I was the one who made sure the wheels turned smoothly. In return, my friend in criminal defense sent me a steady stream of less-than-thrilling cases, creating a cozy ecosystem of referrals. Today, as I sat in my office deep in thought, Laura burst in with a radiant smile, announcing that she was going shopping with her friend Candy Lee. She casually asked if I needed anything from the store, a gesture that struck me as both normal and painfully ironic. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the calm before the storm, a moment of domestic bliss masking the storm clouds gathering right before my eyes. For some inexplicable reason, I woke up today with a strange sense of resolve. Either I would disgrace myself completely, or uncover some troubling truths I wasn't ready for. And here I am, diving headfirst into the unknown. Laura arrived at her friend Candy Lee's house and entered the familiar setting. She stayed there for what seemed like an eternity, about an hour, before Candy Lee emerged from the house looking slightly flustered and jumped into Laura's car. Then they sped off down the street, leaving me to wonder about the nature of their conversation. A GPS tracker was discreetly hidden in the car, and Laura had no idea it was there. I didn't follow them. Minutes passed, and soon an elegant motorcycle pulled into the driveway, its engine growling like a predator. The man, dressed in classic biker gear, dismounted with an unsettling air of confidence. Without even knocking, he walked straight into the house. Seizing the moment, I managed to take a clear photo before he disappeared inside. Feeling like a secret agent on a mission, I lingered long enough to snap a few more photos of the bike and its license plate. Half an hour later, I found myself at the mall, scanning the bustling crowd for any sign of Candy Lee. As I headed to the mall, I couldn't shake the eerie feeling that had crept over me earlier. When I checked the license plate number I had captured, my heart pounded with a mix of curiosity and fear. And so, as I sat down next to her with a steaming cup of coffee, I noticed Candy Lee trying to relax in one of the uncomfortable plastic chairs at the cafe, her expression a mix of surprise and irritation. "Ethan, you scared me!" she exclaimed, her eyes widening. "Why are you here?" she asked, slightly flustered. Shrugging, I tried to make myself comfortable on the hard chair. Without responding, I took a long, slow sip of black coffee, feeling its warmth and bracing myself for the conversation ahead. In truth, I never really liked these trendy coffee drinks. The sight of Candy Lee biting her lip and nervously shifting in her seat made me chuckle quietly. She was clearly feeling dizzy, trying to find a way to avoid the awkwardness of the moment. So I decided to give her a little break. "Calm down, Candy Lee," I thought to myself. "I know very well where she is, who she's with, and what they're up to. Honestly, I've stopped caring about it all." Her hands flew to her face, a clear sign of panic. "Damn it," she muttered. I wanted to ask her a bunch of questions or demand something like, "Let her stay with you. I'll send over all her things." No, nothing of the sort happened. She just shook her head as I turned away. Over the years, the place had changed. What started as a quirky bar and grill had turned into a biker haven, famous for its mouth-watering brisket. It wasn't exactly a family-friendly spot, but on weekends, it had a lively atmosphere. However, weekdays were a different story, often quieter and more peaceful. The moment I walked in, I was greeted by a familiar sight. Liam Hall, grinning meaningfully, handed me a frosty mug. "Welcome to our establishment, counselor. We don't see you here often." It was midday, but no fewer than 20 bikers were scattered around, enjoying the laid-back vibe. "Are we in some kind of trouble, counselor?" Liam asked with a playful glint in his eye. "No," I replied, feeling the weight of the day start to lift. "Everything all right with you?" "No, I'm in a tight spot." Liam, a few other club members, and I gathered around a round table, engaging in casual yet lively conversation. And then, in our chatter, Stephen Robinson came up, a weekend regular at the club, confident he could easily blend in with the crowd. Liam, with a mischievous grin on his face, assured me he would take care of everything. I didn't need the details, honestly. I was just ready to move on. With plenty of free time on my hands, I decided to head home. Less than an hour later, I was struck by how neatly I managed to pack Laura's clothes and personal belongings into black garbage bags. It barely fit in the car, but I got everything in. If she needs furniture or appliances, she'll have to arrange a separate meeting. The car was parked outside Candy Lee's house, but Laura made no move to come outside. Gently placing the bags on the porch, I slipped out of the house, noticing that Candy Lee was watching me from the window. Laura hadn't been in touch. No calls, no messages, no emails, not even an explanation. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Once again, I stopped by her place to drop off some hobby supplies, leaving them on the porch like forgotten relics. I had prepared a simple divorce petition, which she signed while waiting for the clerk to file it. Does she feel any guilt? Was there even a hint of regret? I'll never know. But honestly, I didn't care. That weekend, I drowned myself in a haze of drinking and laughter. But Monday morning caught me off guard. When I arrived at work, I found the place had been broken into. Although nothing was stolen, my desk had been turned into a bizarre display. A massive jar that once held pickles was now overflowing with assorted nuts and bolts. I couldn't help but smirk at the absurdity of it all before grabbing the phone. "Liam?" I left a message since it was still too early for him to be awake. "Lunch at our usual spot at noon. My treat." We met later, and he was already into his usual order. "I'm all ears, man. Spill it," I said to Liam, leaning in with curiosity. "All right. This guy shows up around 5 in the evening. A couple of guys start chatting with him, and believe it or not, they invited him to join them for a game of 8-ball. The guy's eyes lit up. He usually kept to himself. He was on cloud 9, like a kid on Christmas morning. We skipped dessert and instead indulged in strong coffee. But here's my buddy. He decided to take action, inviting 2 potential clients outside. He handed them a toolbox and told them to strip his motorcycle down to the last nut and bolt. But here's the catch. They weren't allowed to touch the engine or transmission. The day was shaping up to be more than just an ordinary Monday. It was a whirlwind of strange happenings and laughter, full of randomness. It took nearly 2 hours, but when they finally finished, the excitement in the room was palpable. Coffee was poured, steam rising into the air, mingling with the remnants of the night's tension. Suddenly, the guy, engrossed in the game, abruptly set down the cue and hurried out. He looked around as if weighing his options and headed for the door. Before leaving, he cast one last glance at the dismantled pile of motorcycle parts that had once been his pride and joy. In the blink of an eye, he was gone, disappearing into the night in a taxi. And just like that, I ended up as the unwitting owner of a DIY bike. Liam suppressed a laugh, clearly amused by the ridiculousness of it all. But by morning it all made sense. Most of the parts had disappeared. What did Lucia say to him? I couldn't say for sure, but I suspected that Laura's name might have come up in the conversation. The week dragged on, each day blending into the next. When the divorce papers were filed, all that was left was the agonizing wait. 90 days felt like an eternity. I missed Laura's presence, the warmth of our conversations, but I couldn't bear the thought that everything would go back to the way it was. To keep myself occupied, I reached out to the company where Stephen Robinson used to work. It turned out he was no longer there, and he hadn't left any forwarding information. The local police department confirmed that no reports of a missing motorcycle had been filed. 2 weeks later, fate intervened, and I ran into Candy Lee at a shopping mall. It was completely unplanned, just a random encounter. She was sitting alone in a cafe, holding a cup of coffee, and her expression was somewhat melancholic. "May I join you?" I asked, catching her off guard this time, but not scaring her. She simply smiled and nodded, and a spark of connection was born between us amidst the bustle of the mall. We sat in heavy silence that seemed to last an eternity. Finally, she broke the silence with a quiet sigh. "Ethan, I'm sorry I ruined your marriage." "It wasn't about you," I replied. "It was about her. I was there, and I did everything I could for her. She came to me for help, and I couldn't turn away. After all, she was my only friend." Silence fell again, the weight of unspoken thoughts hanging in the air. "Is she with him now?" I asked, bracing myself for her answer. "She went back to her hometown to live with her parents, and he just disappeared. No calls, no messages, nothing. It's as if he turned into a ghost overnight. One minute he was there, and the next he just vanished." "Was she heartbroken?" I asked. "Her heart was torn apart from losing you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And him? Not a single tear for him." The question lingered on my tongue, but I hesitated. "But why did she do it?" I began, then quickly added, "But honestly, I don't want to know. Thank you for your time, Candy Lee." As I turned to leave, I saw unshed tears glistening in her eyes. The office atmosphere was quiet, in sharp contrast to the chaos in my head. There were still 2 weeks left until the final divorce, and I mindlessly counted nuts, bolts, and screws in a dusty pickle jar on my desk. And yet I couldn't shake the nagging curiosity about what he had been told that scared him so much he disappeared. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. Clark, oh my God, none of us could have predicted this turn of events. I glanced at Richard, my unwavering companion for the past few decades, desperately trying to hold back the tears that threatened to spill over. "It won't change anything anyway," I managed to say, my voice trembling slightly. "Clark, are you sure about that?" he asked, concern etched on his face. Trying to muster confidence, I nodded, glancing around the crowded club. Among the pulsating lights and laughter sat Sophia, my wife of 30 years. I had always considered myself incredibly lucky to have married such an amazing woman as her. Luxurious blonde hair, a figure that turned heads, and a smile that could light up any room. From the moment I met her, I was captivated. It took only a week for me to fall head over heels in love with her, and within a year, we exchanged vows. With each passing year, my love for her grew deeper, and I was certain she felt the same. But now, doubt had crept in like a shadow, threatening to overshadow everything we had built together. As I moved closer to the scene unfolding before my eyes, I felt Richard's presence beside me. She was laughing and flirting on the lap of some guy, her body swaying playfully as he ran his hands over her. The sight took my breath away. How could she? My heart pounded with anger and betrayal. What had happened to the love we had shared for so many years? I leaned in, curiosity getting the better of me, but Richard firmly gripped my arm, pulling me back. "Think twice about this," he warned, nodding towards the 7 massive figures at the table. Richard was right about being cautious. These 6 were notorious, cold-blooded criminals with a reputation that preceded them. They weren't the kind of people anyone with half a brain would want to provoke. "You're better off not seeing this," Richard suggested, his voice laced with concern. But the chaos was just beginning. As if on cue, 3 more stunning women approached the group. My heart sank as I watched the brute touching my wife Sophia slap her hard on the backside and then shove her towards another man. My heart ached as I saw one of them slip his hand under Sophia's shirt, exploring her without the slightest hint of remorse. Damn it. I could hardly comprehend the scene unfolding before me. She was supposed to be at her sister's tonight, I muttered to Richard, in disbelief at what was happening. Of all the clubs in this city, why did we have to end up here? The whispers spread through the crowd as onlookers began to take notice of what was going on. Two brutes were brazenly groping the women, and a small crowd had gathered, drawn by the disgusting spectacle. The air was thick with tension, and I felt a surge of anger and despair rising within me. It was in that shocking moment that I finally recognized the almost naked woman as Candy, my sister-in-law. This was the same secret affair that had been happening twice a week for a year. I remembered how my sister had been shattered after her husband caught her in bed not with one, but two other men. Had I been so blind? How did I not think to check on her? What allowed me to give her such freedom? My thoughts spiraled as I watched Sophia being lifted onto the table, her laughter echoing as she was forced to dance. My heart sank when I saw a familiar face, Nick Thompson, slip his hand under her short skirt. Would she push him away? No way. Sophia kept dancing, a sultry smile playing on her lips as she moved closer to him, inviting further exploration. A wave of nausea hit me and I struggled to keep my stomach in check, fighting the urge to throw up everything I'd eaten that day. Richard, sensing my distress, grabbed my hand to steady me, his eyes widening in disbelief. "You didn't know, Clark?" he asked, his voice a mix of surprise and concern. "Not in the slightest," I replied, my head buzzing as the reality of the situation crashed down on me. A small crowd had gathered, drawn by the wild energy of the scene, but their attempts to join in the fun were met with rough shoves and quick jabs. One particularly reckless spectator, thinking he could stand his ground, found himself thrown back, fully expecting an unwelcome beating. Meanwhile, Sophia and the red-haired girl, who had been drawn to the table with her, were lost in their own world, engaged in a provocative dance filled with laughter and playful teasing. Their laughter echoed through the air as they pressed close to each other, their chemistry undeniable. The atmosphere thickened with anticipation as they began unbuttoning, showcasing their beauty to the captivated crowd that cheered them on, urging them to go further. I couldn't help but mutter under my breath, begging Sophia to stop, but it was too late. Nick Thompson grabbed Sophia's leg, pulling her closer. To my shock, she didn't resist as he slowly began to overstep his boundaries. The crowd roared in approval, but for the women, only one thing mattered: their laughter and their fun. They continued their provocative performance, wearing nothing but daring high-heeled shoes. The scene was unbearable, and I fought the urge to flee, to disappear into the shadows. Anything would have been better than this torment. Seeing any woman subjected to such humiliation was painful enough, but realizing that it was my wife on that stage brought a heartache I couldn't fully articulate. "Look, Clark," my friend whispered, his voice low and urgent as he discreetly pointed to the far end of the table. "They're feeding that woman something." I followed his gaze, and my stomach clenched at the sight of a woman being spoon-fed some vile, forbidden substance. It was a chilling moment when I realized that this group wasn't just exploiting her, they were likely luring her into a web of addiction. And in the dark corner of my mind, I couldn't shake the fear that my wife might be trapped in a similar nightmare. Damn it, what was I supposed to do? What did I want to do? What would any man in my situation do? The flash of cameras snapped me back to the present, and a heavy sigh escaped my lips as clarity washed over me. I could no longer be a passive observer of this horrifying spectacle. It was time to stand up against the horror unfolding before me. "Cover me, Richard," I said to my buddy, steeling myself. It was time to crash this party. Together, we started making our way towards the exit, our size helping us navigate easily. With Richard, who was even more imposing than I was, we pushed through the crowd without lowering our gaze. Finally, we reached the table, dangerously close to the women and the threatening men lurking nearby. "Don't stick your neck out, idiot!" growled one of the muscle-bound thugs, noticing us encroaching on their territory. "You can look all you want, but if you so much as touch any of them, I'll personally make sure you regret it." Ignoring his warning, I scanned the room for Sophia. "Hey, Sophia!" I called out, hoping to catch her attention. "What the hell are you doing here?" she responded, her tone a mix of confusion and mockery. Very bold, or just plain stupid. The transformation on her face was remarkable. Shock, embarrassment, confusion, all fighting for dominance in those brief moments. And then chaos erupted. "I warned you, idiot!" The thug in front of me snarled, swinging a fist that seemed aimed straight at my face. But it never reached me. I didn't even have time to clarify that the blow was meant for my buddy Richard before he sprang into action. Catching the guy off guard, Richard deftly deflected his wild punch and delivered one of his own. Instantly, half the crowd made the wise decision to leave the scene, but the rest, drawn by the unfolding drama, moved closer. Nick and his friends rushed forward, their voices a cacophony of anger as they pushed aside the startled women. Amidst the chaos, I fumbled for my warrant, barely managing to shout a few crucial words. "Nick Thompson!" I yelled, fighting through the noise. "You're under arrest for drug trafficking and disorderly conduct!" But before I could finish, he lunged at me like a wild animal, his desperation palpable. Thankfully, the plainclothes officers mingling in the crowd quickly restrained him, their presence a silent testament to our preparation. A few minutes later, uniformed police arrived, but by then the scuffle was already dying down, leaving behind only a handful of disgruntled faces. Richard and I stood off to the side, surveying the chaotic scene, a tapestry of discontent and confusion. "Detective Inspector," called a uniformed sergeant, his tone a mix of respect and uncertainty. "What should we do with the women?" "Detain them all," I replied without a moment's hesitation, my mind racing with the implications. "For what?" he asked, the realization dawning on him as he noticed that one of the women was my wife. "Solicitation, indecent behavior, whatever you can come up with," I growled, my patience snapping as the weight of the situation bore down on me. "Lock them all up," I muttered under my breath, watching as Richard and I observed the pathetic procession of handcuffed criminals being led to the waiting police vans. At the rear trailed a motley crew of scantily clad women, their faces a mixture of defiance and despair. As soon as my wife's sister rushed past me, she spat in my direction. Fortunately, she missed, but we've never gotten along. "Clark, for God's sake, please, Clark," my wife pleaded, her voice trembling with desperation. Turning toward her, I started walking forward, a whirlwind of emotions brewing inside me. "Don't let them take me, darling. It's not what it seems," she insisted, her eyes wide with fear. Seeing her appearance made my heart sink. Somehow she had squeezed herself into a dress that barely fit, the fabric stretched over her curves. The red-haired beauty knew how to attract attention, but this time her outfit did little to help. Too much skin was spilling out in all the wrong places. It all felt surreal, a chaotic blend of love and disorder unfolding before my eyes, and this was my wife, the mother of my children and the grandmother of our grandchildren. What a disgrace. She had that look, captivating, hinting at secrets, and now I knew just how deep those secrets ran. "What was this night about, dear?" I shot back, my voice a mix of anger and disbelief. "Your sister's party?" "What are you talking about, Clark?" she said, her voice cracking. Tears rolled down her round cheeks like a thunderstorm. "Let me explain, please. Everyone will understand if you just let me go." My gaze was cold. "Save it for the judge," I replied, turning away. I walked out of the club into the night, holding Richard's hand tightly, while the burden of another sordid chapter trailed behind me. Another chaotic night was over, but its echoes lingered in my mind like an insistent melody. That's it. My 30-year marriage ended here. It seemed like just yesterday we celebrated our 30th anniversary, and today I caught my wife in such a situation. Now Sophia and her sister face a trial, and of course, there will be a divorce and shame before our entire family. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.